Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, July 21st. From the San Antonio Express News, my name is Luis Vasquez, and this is your Express Briefing. All of the stories you need to know to start your day. You can expect mostly sunny skies and a high of 98 in San Antonio today. Bexar County remains at a severe to critical risk level from the novel coronavirus as new cases grew by 481 and 5 more deaths were reported Monday. Recently, San Antonio's COVID-19 numbers garnered reactions from conspiracy theorists that Mayor Ron Nirenberg's staff quickly shut down. Quote, "We're not interested in your promotion of false narratives or conspiracies amid a health crisis." The staff's comments from Nirenberg's page read, "People are sick and dying." The local death toll since the start of the pandemic stands at 262. More than 31,300 people have tested positive for the virus in Bexar County during that same time. At last count, 1,193 patients are being treated in San Antonio area hospitals, down 6 from Sunday. That left 11% of staff beds available. And now we're going to move on to the top stories for the day. As always, you can find links to all these articles in the episode's description. A San Antonio Independent School District agreement with the University of Texas at San Antonio will cover full tuition for SAISD graduates in their top half of their senior class and provide supports to improve enrollment and degree completion rates. The SAISD board approved the collaboration on Monday. Its objectives include enrolling approximately 200 graduates a year at UTSA and getting 50% to graduate from the university in 6 years, up from 30% now. Alia Malik explores the details of the 5-year contract, including how many students could be covered as UTSA grapples with a $36 million budget shortfall. The day before Metro Health Director Dawn Emmerich resigned in June, her boss sent a scathing internal memo blasting Emmerich as lacking the expertise needed to tackle the coronavirus pandemic and creating a hostile work environment for health department employees. Emmerich resigned the next day. The memo, obtained through a public records request, paints the clearest picture yet of the circumstances behind why Emmerich, not even 6 months into the job, stepped down from her post just as COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations began to spike. Joshua Fechter and Brian Chasnoff investigate how relations between Emmerich and Assistant City Manager Colleen Bridger broke down. Maurice McDermott, president and CEO of the Witte Museum, likes to remind people of a story from early in the museum's history. To keep the museum running during the Great Depression, which struck just 3 years after the Witte was launched in 1926, founding director Ellen Scholes Killen created a rattlesnake garden and charged folks 10 cents a head to check it out. It was hugely popular, drawing thousands of visitors and much-needed revenue. McDermott, who has led the Witte for 16 years, cites that spirit of innovation as a reason she expects the Witte to continue well beyond the COVID-19 era. Survival, she said, is in the Witte's DNA. She recently did a Q&A with the Express News about how the museum has responded to challenges created by the current health and economic crisis. A group of young, ambitious new activists emerged in San Antonio seemingly overnight after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. The Black Lives Matter movement threw them into action, but since those early protests, young ambitious activists have grown in scope. On Monday, its leaders got together in a studio just east of downtown for a more personal event. They looked directly into a camera and talked about their ambitious plans to serve San Antonio and why they need help to do it. It's a short film that will be used for the fundraising. Elena Yala has more on what they said and what's next. To keep our readers up to date on the path of COVID-19, the Express News built a dashboard of interactive graphics showing the spread of the virus in the San Antonio area, in Texas as a whole, and across the United States. You can find a link to that dashboard in this episode's description. Next up are your need-to-know headlines. You can find all of these headlines and more inside your Express News subscription. The San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors announced Marina Gonzalez has been hired as CEO of the 91-year-old organization. All signs are pointing towards a competitive race between the incumbent conservative firebrand U.S. Rep. Chip Roy and Democratic mainstay Wendy Davis in Texas's 21st congressional district. Republican activists in Texas are turning to a Florida Tea Party hero from a decade ago to lead them into battle in November, despite a push from some who have called on the party to soften its hardline conservative tone to better position the GOP with suburban voters. Texas Comptroller Glenn Hagar on Monday predicted a $4.6 billion shortfall by the end of the state's 2-year budget cycle as the economy struggles to emerge from the coronavirus pandemic and recent volatility in the oil market. Liberty Media Corporation, which owns 72% of SiriusXM, received the Justice Department's blessing to increase its shares in San Antonio's iHeartMedia up to 50%. San Antonio software company GlobalScape Incorporated will soon drop from the ranks of local publicly traded companies. Help Systems LLC, an Eden Prairie, Minnesota software company, is set to acquire GlobalScape in a deal valued at $217 million, including debt. The Express News editorial board writes, quote, U.S. Representative John Lewis's humanity was greater than any inhumanity he suffered. When confronted with the worst in people, he offered the best of himself. A judge has denied a disbarred San Antonio lawyer's motion for a judicial clemency in a 2000 theft conviction that involved using a legal loophole to extort hush money from his then-wife's lovers. An appeal for sentencing relief by former Crystal City Mayor Ricardo Lopez, one of 5 city officials convicted on corruption charges, has been denied by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. DeMar DeRozan said he's not thinking about his contract situation and is focused on helping the Spurs' younger players get ready to compete for a playoff spot in the NBA bubble in Orlando. DeRozan can become a free agent after the season. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee launched an ad buy in Texas last week. Joe Biden's play for Texas was a topic of conversation on this week's episode of the Express News Puro Politics podcast. Brandeis culinary arts instructor Rachel Wright put her spin on an oft-used coaching phrase to describe Jordan Flowers' enthusiasm for her class. He was the first one in the kitchen and the last one to leave, Wright said of Flowers, who graduated from Brandeis last month. Next month, Flowers will head to Johnson & Wales University in Charlotte, North Carolina, to study culinary arts and food and beverage management. That might come as a surprise to most who knew Flowers as a 2-year starting linebacker for the Broncos. And now let's move on to the fun stuff. A great barbecue can be found throughout the country. One of those places is northern Alabama, where a celebrated white sauce that has been used for nearly 100 years is king of the scene. Chuck's Food Shack takes us to a tasty barbecue flavor trip outside of Texas with Alabama's famous white barbecue sauce. San Antonio artist Buster Graybill's mobile art piece inspired by doomsday preppers turned out to be a great escape during the pandemic. Deborah Martin has more on this unique art installation. NBA Bubble Life is giving the Spurs time to flex their athletic abilities in other games, like ping pong and cornhole. Madeline Mendoza has more on that story. The Texas Testicle Festival is returning to Fredericksburg. Priscilla Aguirre has more on the festival and what you need to know. A new Jewish deli restaurant, The Hayden, is opening soon on Broadway near Alamo Heights. Chuck Blunt has the latest on the new eatery. And that's all for today. This was your Express Briefing. My name is Luis Vasquez. Please consider becoming an Express News subscriber to get in-depth coverage on all of the stories you heard this morning. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast inside of your Apple Podcast app, as it really helps the show. Have a wonderful day, everyone.